The voice called my name through the static, a woman's voice, desperate and clear. The problem was, she'd been dead for 41 years, along with everyone else on Flight 2120. Vincent Mercer has been a radar systems engineer at Hawthorne Air Traffic Control Center for 28 years. He's seen technology evolve from analog screens to sophisticated digital systems that can track thousands of aircraft simultaneously. But nothing in his extensive technical training prepared him for what happened on the night of March 18, 2021. I was conducting a routine calibration test on our new STARS Elite radar system, Vincent explains, his hands trembling slightly as he recounts the incident. It was just after 3 in the morning, the perfect time for system diagnostics because air traffic is minimal. I was alone in the East Wing control room. The STARS Elite Standard Terminal Automation Replacement System represents the cutting edge of air traffic control technology, a $43 million upgrade that had been installed just 2 weeks prior at the Hawthorne facility. The system processes data from multiple radars, creating a comprehensive picture of the airspace that extends 200 nautical miles in every direction. The calibration was standard procedure, Vincent continues. We run a series of tests to ensure the system correctly identifies and tracks all aircraft within range while filtering out false returns. I'd done similar calibrations dozens of times before. But this time would be different. At precisely 3:17 a.m., as Vincent was running a frequency modulation test, something unusual appeared on his screen. A faint blip, approximately 30 miles southeast of the control center, over what would be open ocean. At first, I assumed it was a glitch, maybe a ship with an unusually strong radar signature, or perhaps interference from another system. He pauses, his face noticeably paler. But then, it started moving, and not like any aircraft I've ever tracked. The unidentified return moved in patterns that defied conventional flight physics. Sharp 90-degree turns at speeds exceeding 800 knots, hovering motionless for several seconds before accelerating instantly to impossible velocities. I immediately checked with nearby facilities to confirm if they were seeing the same anomaly, but their systems showed nothing in that airspace, Vincent recalls. That's when I knew something was very wrong with our new system. Following protocol, Vincent began a diagnostic reboot of the radar processing unit. As the system powered down, he disconnected his headset and stood to stretch his legs. The control room was silent, illuminated only by the soft glow of emergency lighting and the blank screens awaiting reactivation. And then he heard it. At first, it was just a whisper, like someone right behind me, Vincent says, his voice dropping almost to a whisper itself. I thought maybe someone had come into the room while I was focused on the screens, but when I turned around, no one was there. The whispering continued, growing gradually louder until Vincent could make out words, fragmented phrases that seemed to be coming from the disconnected headset lying on the console. Please, help us. Lost. Vincent. Vincent froze. Hearing my name, my first name, that's when true fear set in. No one at the facility calls me Vincent. I'm Mercer to everyone here. Despite every instant telling him not to, Vincent slowly picked up the headset and placed it over his ears. The voice became crystal clear, a woman sounding exhausted and frightened. Vincent, please respond. This is Flight 2120. We're lost. The instruments aren't working. Please respond. Flight 2120. The designation immediately registered with Vincent. Southern Pacific Airways Flight 2120 was a Boeing 737 that had disappeared without a trace on December 12, 1980, while en route from Los Angeles to Honolulu. All 94 passengers and 6 crew members were presumed dead after an extensive search failed to find any wreckage. I knew about Flight 2120 because my father had been part of the original search and rescue operation, Vincent explains. He was a Coast Guard pilot, and the disappearance haunted him for years. He would talk about it sometimes, how an entire commercial airliner could just vanish without a distress call, without debris, without oil slicks, nothing. But how could Vincent be hearing voices from a flight that had disappeared 41 years earlier?
And more disturbingly, how did the voice know his name?
I convinced myself it was a prank. Someone must have hacked our communication system, learned about my father's connection to that flight, and was playing a cruel joke. Vincent's rational explanation was challenged when the radar system completed its reboot. The mysterious blip reappeared, but now it was stationary, hovering approximately 28 miles offshore, and it was considerably larger than before. I tried to convince myself it was a military exercise, maybe a carrier group that wasn't broadcasting identification, but deep down, I knew that wasn't it. The radio came to life again. This time, multiple voices overlapped, creating a cacophony of pleas and questions. "Where are we? Please help us. There's something wrong with the sky. Vincent, why won't you answer?" That last question, again using his first name, sent a chill down Vincent's spine. But it was what came next that truly defied explanation. They started describing me, my gray hair, the coffee mug on my desk, the photo of my daughter that I'd just set down minutes before. Details they couldn't possibly know unless they could somehow see him. At this point, Vincent did something that violated every protocol in air traffic control. He responded to the unidentified communications. "This is Hawthorne Control. Identify yourself." The voices fell silent for several seconds. Then a single voice, male, authoritative, presumably the pilot, responded. "This is Captain Robert Hendricks, Southern Pacific Airways Flight 2120. We've encountered unusual conditions. Navigation systems are non-functional. We cannot determine our position. Who am I speaking with?" Robert Hendricks, the name of the pilot who had indeed been commanding Flight 2120 when it disappeared. "I felt physically ill," Vincent admits, "because I knew Captain Hendricks had been dead for 4 decades. Yet here he was, speaking to me in real time." Vincent's training took over. He asked the voice for details about their situation, all while frantically checking historical records on his secondary monitor. "We departed LAX on schedule," the voice responded. "Approximately 2 hours into the flight, we encountered unusual weather, not on any forecast. Instrumentation began failing. Radio communications went dead. We've been flying blind for I'm not sure how long. Time seems inconsistent." Every detail matched the historical record of Flight 2120's last known moments. The departure time, the point at which radar contact was lost, even the unusual weather phenomenon that had been reported by other aircraft in the vicinity that day. But something didn't add up. If this was truly Flight 2120 from 1980, how were they communicating with a modern air traffic control system? And why now, 41 years later? "Sir, what is today's date?" Vincent asked, dreading the answer. "December 12th, 1980, the voice replied, without hesitation. The implications were staggering. Either this was an elaborate hoax, or somehow Flight 2120 was still in flight, trapped in some kind of temporal anomaly, unable to find its way home. But the most disturbing question remained. How did they know Vincent's name? "My father," Vincent whispers, realization dawning. "My father was part of the search operation. He would have been monitoring frequencies, listening for any transmission from the missing aircraft. They must have heard him saying my name." The historical record showed that Vincent's father, Edward Mercer, had indeed been one of the Coast Guard pilots who searched tirelessly for Flight 2120. He would have been on the radio with other search teams, potentially mentioning his family. But that still doesn't explain how they could see me, describe my office in 2021. The blip on the radar screen suddenly began moving again, this time in a wide circular pattern. And with that movement, the voices became more frantic. "It's coming back! Oh God, not again! Vincent, warn them! Warn everyone about the lights!" Static overwhelmed the transmission, punctuated by what sounded like screams. Then, silence. The radar screen showed the blip accelerating to impossible speeds before abruptly vanishing from the display. Vincent sat in stunned silence for several minutes, trying to process what had just occurred. Then, with shaking hands, he began documenting everything, recording timestamps and saving radar data. By dawn, he had compiled a comprehensive report of the incident.
He submitted it to his supervisors, fully expecting to be met with disbelief or concerns about his mental health. To his surprise, his report was taken seriously, perhaps too seriously. Within hours, 3 men in suits arrived from what they claimed was the National Transportation Safety Board, Vincent recalls, but their questions weren't about system malfunctions or potential explanations.
They wanted to know exactly what the voices had said, especially about the lights. The men confiscated all of Vincent's data, including his personal notes. They instructed him not to discuss the incident with anyone and suggested that system testing had triggered an old recording, a convenient explanation that didn't address how the recording could have described Vincent's appearance or possessions. Most air traffic controllers would have accepted the explanation and moved on, but Vincent couldn't. Not with his father's connection to Flight 2120. Not with the voices that knew his name. He began researching the flight in earnest, requesting historical records through official channels and unofficial ones. What he discovered was a pattern of inconsistencies and sealed documents surrounding the disappearance. Flight 2120 wasn't the only aircraft to vanish in that specific region of the Pacific, Vincent explains, showing a map with several marked locations. Between 1975 and 1985, 3 other aircraft disappeared in roughly the same area, all during clear weather, all without distress calls, all without debris. More disturbing were the references to atmospheric anomalies in heavily redacted reports that Vincent managed to obtain through contacts at the FAA. Descriptions of unusual light patterns reported by other pilots in the area, instrumentation failures, and, in one partially blacked-out document, a cryptic reference to potential temporal displacement. I believe Flight 2120 encountered something that our science can't yet explain, Vincent says, some kind of phenomenon that disrupted not just their navigation systems, but their position in time itself. It's a fantastic theory, one that most scientific authorities would dismiss outright. But Vincent isn't alone in his suspicions. Dr. Eleanor Weiss, a theoretical physicist at MIT who specializes in quantum field theory, has been studying similar anomalies for over 15 years. What Mr. Mercer experienced is consistent with what we might expect from a localized temporal distortion, Dr. Weiss explains. There are regions in our oceans and atmosphere where the electromagnetic properties appear to fluctuate in ways that defy conventional physics. We don't understand them yet, but the evidence for their existence is growing. Dr. Weiss points to the well-documented electronic fog phenomena in the Bermuda Triangle and similar locations globally. Areas where instruments fail, compasses spin wildly, and in some cases, aircraft and ships report impossible position jumps or time discrepancies. If Flight 2120 encountered such a phenomenon, it's theoretically possible that the aircraft and everyone aboard might be trapped in what we call a temporal bubble, essentially experiencing time at a different rate than the rest of the universe. In such a scenario, what might be 41 years for us could be mere hours for those inside the bubble. But that still doesn't explain how they could perceive Vincent in 2021, Dr. Weiss admits, unless the phenomenon works both ways, creating a bridge between 2 points in time. 2 months after the incident, Vincent made a discovery that chilled him to the bone. While reviewing historical photographs of the search operation for Flight 2120, he found a group photo of the Coast Guard crew that included his father. In the background, barely visible through a window, was a radar screen. And on that screen was a distinctive pattern, the exact same circular flight path that Vincent had observed on his modern radar system 41 years later. They were seeing it back then, the same anomaly I witnessed. Vincent says, his voice breaking. My father might have been tracking them at the exact same moment they were communicating with me. This revelation led Vincent to a theory. What if the new STARS Elite radar system, with its enhanced sensitivity and processing power, had accidentally detected signals from across time? What if the disappearance of Flight 2120 wasn't just a matter of where, but when? I believe that Flight 2120 is still out there, trapped in some kind of temporal distortion, Vincent says. And occasionally, when conditions are just right, they can reach across time and make contact with our present. It's a fantastic theory, one that most scientists would reject outright. But then came the second incident, 3 months later, that would make even the skeptics pause. Vincent was not on duty when it happened. Another controller, Maria Santos, was operating the same radar station during another late-night shift. She had no knowledge of Vincent's experience. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the same anomalous blip appeared on her radar, and through her headset came a transmission. "This is Flight 2120. We need to speak with Vincent Mercer. Please, time is running out." Maria, following protocol, reported the unidentified contact to her supervisor. The radar data was recorded, and, once again, officials from an unspecified government agency arrived to collect all evidence. But Maria had secretly used her phone to record part of the transmission. She shared it with Vincent, knowing of his interest in aviation mysteries. The voice on the recording is distorted but understandable. "The lights are a doorway. They pull you in. Time moves differently inside. We've been flying for what feels like hours, but our watches show only minutes have passed. Something is hunting us in here. If anyone finds this transmission, warn them about the Pacific Corridor. Coordinates are..." The recording cuts off there, but it was enough to convince Vincent that his experience had been real. "I've spent the past year trying to piece together what happened to Flight 2120 and what might still be happening to them," Vincent says. "I believe they're trapped in some kind of space-time anomaly, experiencing time at a different rate than we do, and somehow our new radar system briefly established a connection across that temporal divide." Vincent has identified what he believes is a pattern to these connections. They seem to occur when specific atmospheric conditions coincide with certain radar frequencies. He's developed a prediction model and believes another potential window will open next month. "I've requested to be on duty that night," he says. "If they make contact again, I want to try to guide them home." But Dr. Weiss cautions against such attempts. If these temporal distortions exist as theorized, they're incredibly dangerous. Attempting to manipulate them without understanding the physics involved could potentially worsen the situation for Flight 2120 and for us. She points to disturbing similarities between Vincent's descriptions of the radar anomalies and theoretical models of what scientists call Einstein-Rosen bridges, popularly known as wormholes. If what Mr. Mercer observed is indeed some kind of naturally occurring wormhole, it could explain how Flight 2120 disappeared without a trace. But it also suggests something far more troubling, that these phenomena might be becoming more common, or at least more detectable with our advancing technology. Several current and former air traffic controllers have come forward since Vincent shared his experience, describing similar anomalous radar returns and unexplained communications. Most occurred in the same general region of the Pacific where Flight 2120 disappeared. "There's something out there," Vincent insists, "something that's claimed multiple aircraft over the decades. And now, somehow, one of those aircraft is reaching out to us across time itself." But the most disturbing development came just 2 weeks ago, when Vincent received an unmarked envelope at his home address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a passenger manifest from Flight 2120. One name was circled in red: Edward Mercer. "My father wasn't just part of the search operation," Vincent says, his voice barely audible. "He was supposed to be on that flight. He had a ticket, but at the last minute, he was called away on Coast Guard business and couldn't make it. The universe, reality, whatever you want to call it, it seems to be trying to correct that anomaly." Vincent believes this explains why the voices knew his name, why they could see him. Somehow, across the decades, they sensed the connection. A passenger who should have been on board but wasn't. They're reaching out to the family of the man who should have shared their fate, Vincent theorizes. And I think they're trying to warn us about something bigger. The warning about the lights has particular significance to Vincent. His father, before his death 5 years ago, would sometimes wake screaming from nightmares about lights in the Pacific. He would talk about doors opening in the sky and things coming through. At the time, Vincent attributed these episodes to PTSD from his father's Coast Guard rescue operations. Now, he's not so sure. What if he somehow knew? What if, across time, he sensed what happened to Flight 2120? What was happening to them still?
The last known radar position of Flight 2120 correlates with an area that oceanographers have identified as having unusual electromagnetic properties. Compass readings fluctuate wildly, GPS systems show impossible position jumps, and occasionally, pilots report seeing unusual light formations that aren't visible on any instrumentation. Locals call it the Pacific Corridor, a stretch of ocean where several aircraft and ships have disappeared without explanation over the decades. I believe Flight 2120 found one end of the corridor, Vincent says, and they're still flying, still looking for a way out. The theoretical implications are mind-boggling. If Flight 2120 is indeed trapped in some kind of temporal distortion, experiencing time at a different rate than the outside world, then for the passengers and crew, only a few hours might have passed since their departure in 1980. Imagine being stuck in a place where time itself doesn't work properly, Vincent says, where you can somehow perceive events from different time periods simultaneously, where you can see the past, the present, maybe even the future. Dr. Weiss suggests that if such a phenomenon exists, it might explain other historical disappearances, from the lost colony of Roanoke to more recent aviation mysteries like Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. Perhaps these disappearances aren't about physical location at all, she theorizes. Perhaps they're about time displacement. And with our technology becoming increasingly sensitive, we're starting to detect the echoes of these events. Vincent has requested leave from his position at Hawthorne Air Traffic Control Center. He plans to be on a boat at the coordinates where Flight 2120 disappeared during the next predicted window. If they make contact again, I want to be as close as possible, he explains. Maybe proximity matters. Maybe I can help guide them home. Officials from multiple government agencies have warned Vincent against this plan. The area has been designated a restricted zone, ostensibly for military exercises. But Vincent believes the restriction is related to the temporal anomalies. They know something's out there, he insists. They've known for decades, and they're afraid of what might come through if that doorway opens wider. In the months since his experience, Vincent has connected with families of passengers who were aboard Flight 2120.
Many report strange dreams or intuitions that their loved ones are somehow still alive, still trying to find their way home. My mother started having vivid dreams last year, says Amanda Chen, whose grandmother was a passenger on Flight 2120. She would wake up insisting that her mother was calling to her, telling her about strange lights in the sky and time moving differently. We thought it was just grief resurfacing. Now I'm not so sure. Similar accounts have emerged from other families, dreams of loved ones trapped in a place where the sky is wrong and time stretches and compresses like taffy. Most disturbing are the consistent descriptions of something hunting them in this other place, something that moves between moments and wears faces it shouldn't have. Vincent believes these dreams might be actual communications from the trapped passengers, reaching across time through the connections of family and memory. The mind might be more receptive to these temporal echoes than our technology, he suggests, especially during sleep when our brainwaves operate at different frequencies. As Vincent prepares for his expedition to the coordinates where Flight 2120 disappeared, he's been experiencing dreams of his own, dreams where he's aboard the aircraft, looking out a window at an impossible sky filled with shifting colors and geometries that shouldn't exist. In the dreams, the pilot announces that we've been flying for 41 years, Vincent says, and then someone sits down next to me, a man I recognize from old photographs. My father. He looks exactly as he did in 1980, and he tells me, "You shouldn't have answered the call, son. Now they know how to find you." Vincent's expedition is scheduled for December 12, 2022, exactly 42 years after the disappearance of Flight 2120. He's equipped with multiple recording devices, including specialized equipment designed to detect electromagnetic anomalies. If they make contact again, I want irrefutable evidence, he says, something that can't be confiscated or explained away. But Dr. Weiss has issued a final warning. If these phenomena operate as theorized, then any attempt to force open that connection could have catastrophic consequences, not just for Mr. Mercer, but potentially for the fabric of reality itself.
She points to certain quantum physics models suggesting that temporal distortions, if forced beyond their natural parameters, could potentially create cascading failures in spacetime, essentially tears in reality that might spread uncontrollably. Whatever happened to Flight 2120, whatever is still happening to them, it might be better left undisturbed, she cautions. Some doors are closed for a reason. Vincent acknowledges the risk, but remains determined.
94 passengers and 6 crew members have been trapped in that temporal prison for what, to us, has been 42 years, he says. But for them, it might have been only hours or days of terror and confusion. If there's any chance I can help them find their way home, I have to try. As this investigation continues, the question remains, what really happened to Southern Pacific Airways Flight 2120? Was it simply lost at sea, another aviation tragedy that time has obscured? Or is it still out there, trapped between moments, its passengers and crew reaching across decades to find their way home? And perhaps most chilling of all, if Vincent Mercer makes contact again, what might follow those voices back through the temporal doorway they've opened? What would you do if you heard the voices of the long dead calling your name through the static? Do you believe Flight 2120 is lost forever, or could it truly be trapped in some kind of temporal anomaly, still trying to find its way home? Share your theories in the comments, and subscribe for more investigations into aviation mysteries that challenge our understanding of reality itself.